Hello, fellow game developers. It is time to start learning Unity. We have already installed it and created our first project, and now we just want to open that project if you don't already have it open and learn the interface. So use my little shortcut there. You can see that under projects now I do have a project, the one we have already created. And so this is one way you can open up projects in Unity. And here is our project. I'm going to go ahead and make it full screen, and we're going to talk about all these different parts of Unity, the ones that we use all the time. There's tons and tons of windows. You can see a whole list of windows that we could be using. The ones that we use all the time should already be showing. So let's start with the hierarchy window. You can see here that there's a sample scene. A game can be made up of one or many scenes, and this is just the first scene that it gives you by default. That sample scene is inside the assets folder, inside the scenes folder, right there. It's the scene that's currently open. All the game objects that are part of that scene are listed underneath it. So there's a main camera and a directional light. The scene window is where all of my scene is. I'm building the scene in this space. The default scene gave me this main camera. I can see it right there. When I have it selected, I can look through that camera. I've got the camera preview. I also have a directional light, which is how our scene is currently being lit up. And then any other game objects I add to my scene will show up in the hierarchy and wherever I place them into the scene. Notice there's a couple more tabs up here. The game tab is the tab that lets you see the game. The game is not currently being played, but I am looking through that camera and seeing what I would see inside the game. It's a pretty empty scene at this point. If I go back to scene view, I'm back to where I can work on the game. Now notice there's a play button up here. If I click on that, you're going to see that it automatically switches from the scene tab to the game tab. And as long as I'm playing, it's going to be in that game view until I press that play button again to stop it, and it moves back to the scene view. The other tab is the asset store, and we will talk about that in a future video. That's going to be a really important place for you to get assets that you don't want to create yourself but could be made by others that you want to bring into your game. The next important window is the inspector window. Now if I click over here so that there's nothing selected, I see that there's nothing in the inspector window. So the inspector window is for inspecting the currently selected object or item. And so if I select, for instance, main camera, I am seeing all the properties of a main camera. Every game object will be made up of a bunch of components and properties. So if I look at my directional light, you can see, yes, it has its own set of properties. The next window we should talk about is the project window. We briefly discussed this previously, of it showing basically what is in our project, specifically what is in our assets folder. Right now in our assets folder, there's only one other folder. We will want to make other folders in here, and I think this would be a good time to do it. I'm going to right click and say create folder, and one of them would be scripts. I'm going to use a capital S with that. The naming scheme is important that you're consistent in how you name things. It really helps when you're coding, and we will get into coding eventually in this series of videos. And that's where scripts will lie, inside that folder. We're going to create a few more. We're going to make a textures folder, and that's of course where all our textures will be. We're going to create a materials folder. We're going to create a prefabs folder, and with all of these I'm capitalizing the first letter in that kind of consistent naming scheme. These are folders you're going to want in every project, and we'll be adding more for sure. Now when you're looking at the project window, sometimes this will get a lot of things in it. And so sometimes you might want to see it in more of a list view. You've got this little slider here at the bottom right, and you can make it bigger if you want, or you can scroll down all the way down until it becomes a list. And so now I can go into, say, materials, and I'm in that folder. I can come back out of materials either by clicking on assets over here, clicking on a different folder, or clicking on assets right here. There is another tab right here with the project window, and that switches to the console window. And it'll be a while before we use this, but as soon as we start coding, this will be really important.